So here we go. A little kind of tutorial on tempo training, zone three. What is it? Why should I do it? Why shouldn't I do it? Um, I figured this would be a good one to do live and have questions. There's always a lot of questions on this one. So you can go to the blog and check out what we have written down there, and I'm just going to go over that, um, explain it a little bit better, hopefully. Um, Tempo or zone three is basically it's that area between kind of your long ride pace, your conversation pace, and riding real hard, riding at threshold or above your lactate threshold. Um, it's about 75% to 88% of your threshold power. Okay, so even if you're not using power, you can think in terms of that. Um, the this area tempo is a lot of people think it's a waste of time, shouldn't really train there that much, and then a lot of people more recently are saying you should just train there all the time. Just right, just go hard. And there's good. There's a lot of good things that go along with both of those. Riding at tempo. Now, if you look back and you kind of review our endurance post that we had on long rides, training in zone two and endurance training, and we talk about those four key adaptations that you get from that riding in zone two, quote unquote, your endurance training. A lot of people call it base training. I hate that word. But training in zone three does all of those same adaptations, except you get those adaptations a lot faster. You get much more adaptation per minute spent in zone three than you do in zone two. So it is very good for that endurance training. It is endurance training gone crazy in terms of what's happening to you on a cellular level. Um, However, there's a catch to this. When we talk about endurance training, we want to do stuff that's long, okay? And so I talk about breaking that 70-minute barrier and going beyond that. And certainly, when we talk about long, we talk about long being 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours for a workout, but long is also consistent, day after day after day. So we got a bunch of people doing the training challenge, and the thing comments I'm getting from that is, I'm really tired from yesterday, and I'm tired from the day before, and now I have to go out and do this workout again. That's endurance training, day after day after day of training. And so the catch to doing this tempo training or any kind of high intensity training is you cannot do it for as long as you can a lower intensity. So there are some adaptations that you can get more of and better regardless of their lack of time in zone 3 because you're going harder. More neurological recruitment, more muscle recruitment, um, more oxygen transportation, things like that. And then there are other things that can suffer because you don't get to do those real long rides. So there's a give and take. There's a definite kind of catch-22 to tempo training. So some of you are probably already thinking, well, I don't have 4 hours to ride, so I should do some tempo training. And that's absolutely right. And there's some other practical adaptations for training in zone 3. And then I'll go through a couple of those practical applications here, and then I'll talk about just some key things that I like to see for doing tempo rides or tempo intervals, any kind of training in zone 3. So bike race, Tour of the Gila, which is a 5-day bike race, very hilly, long hilly time trial, long stages. No matter what category you're in, they're long for your category. So we've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of power files from that particular race, and we've seen a lot of clients do it. And day one is a real flat rolling stage with a big uphill finish. We generally see a lot of riders spend about 25% of their total time in zone 3. Now, for the category 2 field, it's a 4.5-hour race. It's a 4.5-hour stage. So it's a good amount of time at tempo. For the second stage, it's very hilly. Probably one of the hillier races I've ever done, mile per mile. Stage 2 of the Tour of the Gila. And we see a lot of people there doing 40 or 50% of that time at tempo. So, this is over 2 hours of riding at tempo. That's a big chunk of that race. And as we go on through doing all these training zones, I generally like to think of each training zone as a different engine. And while they all work together, and they're all very important to have well developed because they all work together, it's good to have a certain engine well developed if you're going to use it a lot. This is a great example of needing that tempo engine well developed, particularly riding uphill at tempo for total of 2 hours here. Some of this fresh, some of this very fatigued at the end of the stage. Half Ironman. Most of your half Ironman or even your Olympic distance Ironman, when you're talking about any kind of triathlon that goes, total time of the race is 2.5 hours, up to 4 or more. Another visit from the cat, probably get a couple more. You're going to spend a lot of time at tempo, okay? A lot of time somewhere in zone 3, including the run as well. So, at Silverman, the Silverman Half Ironman, which they don't have anymore, which is too bad, but one of the fastest amateur bike split there one year had 65% of the time of a 2 hour and 45-minute ride, very hilly, windy course in zone 3. That's a lot of time to be spending there, and it's good to have that well developed. It's good to have that zone well developed if you want to run well coming off the bike, or if you want to sprint well afterwards for the finish, or go up that hill real fast to the finish line, or whatever. In the shorter races, a short criterium, we see much less time in zone 3. So not as needed to have that zone well developed. But what about the training? What about training for a shorter race or training for any race? So again, we go back to that. How much time do you have? One of the things I tell people is the only kind of bad training there is the training that you always do, the training that you never change. That's bad. That kind of develops weaknesses. That develops weak areas when you just do one type of training. So you need to vary your training. If you are on limited time, like in the winter, etc. When you have limited time in the winter, you're inside on the trainer or in a spinning class, stuff like that. That's where the tempo stuff really comes in handy. I have a guy training for an Ironman right now, very, very limited time, lots of tempo riding, lots of threshold intervals, okay, lot of bang for your buck type training. At some point, you need to buckle down and do the long rides, okay? And if you go to the blog, on the front page, there's 2 graphs there. And one of them is from a group ride. And this is one of the really good examples I have of just how to get some good tempo training done. So these are pictures of power files. The yellow line is power. The first one is a team ride. And you can see the power is kind of all over the place there. These are on the home page in the blog. And this ride was 3 hours and 40 minutes long. and I did 1,200 or 2,100 kilojoules of work. So if you don't know what kilojoules are, if you're not familiar with power, it's just the unit of energy. You can think of it as, I spent this much energy on that ride, or I got that much. I got 2,100, endurance adaptation points, if you want to think of it that way. No, I can look up what the TSS was for these rides. I don't have it right here though. The tempo ride is below. Now this ride was just over 2 hours, 2 hours and 9 minutes, and I did 1,862 kilojoules. Okay, so almost the same amount of kilojoules, and a fraction of the time. And this tempo ride was a ride I did by myself. It was actually on my time trial bike. It was out around Carter Lake, and you can see the warm up in the beginning, and a little bit of cool down at the end. And this is a 2 hour. No, it's not a 2 hour. It's an hour and 40-minute tempo effort. And you can see the drop in the middle. That's just from a real steep downhill that I couldn't really pedal on. But this is a good example of one of the things I'd like to see when people do tempo is non-stop, steady pedaling. No breaks, okay? You can't do tempo on a group ride. Doesn't work. It's solo, into the wind, just grinding it out. Just tempo, just every pedal stroke as strong as the last one. This really helps build that muscular endurance too, that neurological endurance. It's a real great way to do tempo. You don't need to do it for that long. Another way we do tempo a lot here, if you're preparing for hilly races, is in Boulder, we'll do a lot of kind of canyon hopping, we call it, which we ride up one of the canyons for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long the climb is. We come back down, we go over a few blocks to the next canyon, and we go up the next one, 20, 30 minutes, however long it is, come back down again, and we repeat that several times. We just ride in tempo on each climb, and it gets pretty exhausting after even 90 minutes of just climbing. So I'll take some questions, Facebook, email me, or you can put them up here in the chat.